Yeah, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through how I think the situation is changing economics and politically with Brexit. I tend to talk for a long time once you've got a microphone in my hands, so what I'm doing is setting my clock, the timer there. Rather than bore you with a little bit about business with Scotland, which will set the scene for this, I'm just going to show you a quick video, which hopefully we've now got synced. We are business for Scotland. We are business owners, directors and entrepreneurs, and we believe in Scotland. We believe that we can create a better nation, a fairer, more prosperous Scotland. Scotland's most active, dynamic and influential business group, we support independence. Our grassroots independence campaign helped take us to the brink of victory. And when the UK moved towards Brexit, our economic research and EU campaign helped deliver a Remain vote in Scotland. We make the case for Scotland's future prosperity through independence, using hard facts. We lead from the front, we stand for SMEs and for policies that enhance growth and prosperity.
Scotland's future at the moment is still an open question, whether that's around Brexit and forging new relationships with Europe, whether it's around redefining the relationship with the other nations in these islands, or indeed taking our place as an independent country. The business community, in its broadest sense, is open to those possibilities.
Business for Scotland is an organisation going from strength to strength, and it gives a voice for business, and it's more important than ever that business has that voice.
No other business group speaks for Scottish business like we do. No other business group believes in Scotland like we do. We are business in Scotland. We are business for Scotland. I'll quickly switch that. How are we doing? Here we go, back again. I'll quickly switch that off before it says, please contribute to our crowdfunder, which is starting next week. There's too many fundraisers in the room. So yeah, I want to talk about the economics of Brexit. And to put this into context, we're going to talk about the pound and what's happening to the pound and what that means to Scotland and what it also means to Scotland in terms of one of the big decisions that has to be made before the next referendum. But first, let's remind ourselves as what it is we're actually leaving when we talk about Britain leaving the EU. The EU is 28 member states, about to drop to 28 because Scotland will be staying in when England leaves. 500 million people, which account for approximately 25% of the global economy, because those 500 million are also amongst the 500 million highest paid people. It's a very important economic grouping. 25% of the actual global economy. 20 million companies of which to sell services to, and 26% of global services bought, but also 16% of manufactured goods. It just goes to show how important and how profitable being part of this single market can actually be. There's two things to point out here. People are saying, oh, we can trade with India. Yeah, in India, average manufacturing worker salary or pay 79 pence per hour. The United Kingdom, £7.56 per hour. Yeah, we do a trade deal with India, we're dead. We allow their products in here openly, like they allow our products there. It doesn't matter how many of them there are, we cannot compete. We've seen that happen already with even call centres. So the EU is important to us because it's protected for a high value manufacturing economy. Also, about 300,000 Scottish jobs are directly dependent or related to our EU membership, and I'm not saying, I never did say that those would all go as a direct result of Brexit, but we've got to understand that quite a few of them will, if there is a hard Brexit. Now, how important is it to us? Well, it's up, you've heard Nicola saying 40% of our exports. I've calculated up to 45% of our exports. Craig and I were just talking about this. No one knows how much we export. No one bothers to calculate it properly. So my guess is as good as anyone's on that. But our exports to the EU have been growing significantly faster than to the rest of the world. over the last 10 years, specifically food and drink, which is very, very important to us because it's all the ingredients are sourced here, the labour is here, and it's something that's very much in high demand. Scottish food exports have topped the 1.1 billion mark. You add drink in there, then it comes to about 5.1 billion. We export 125 pounds of whisky per second from Scotland. 125 pounds per second. I know you're doing a quick calculation dividing 125 by 30 pounds. Now you have to divide it by 3 pounds because there's no tax on these. This is how much it costs before the UK adds the tax on it. It's about 3 or 4 pounds a bottle, average. We export to the United States as our biggest export market, but actually just take a look at France, Spain, Germany, etc. They are all within the EU, so you can see just how important it is to us. Now, when we talk about the economics of Brexit, you have to consider this particular promise. I think I was one of the first people to criticise it. I don't mean that I yelled at the television when I saw it. It was my research was actually used in debunking this. But you know, basically, the UK media showed talked about the economics of Brexit as if it mattered, as if it would impact on every single part of the United Kingdom in exactly the same way, when it absolutely would not. Scotland, with 8.4% of the UK population, manages to pull down 17.4% of all the EU grants to the United Kingdom. So we do quite well, or significantly better, out of EU membership than the United Kingdom as a whole. Wales does even better than us, and so does Northern Ireland. Why Wales voted to leave, I'm not quite sure, because I think a lot of people knew that. The net annual cost, when you actually take our population percentage share of the EU fees away from the grants we actually get, or the grants away from that, we end up with 97 million pounds. That's all it costs for Scotland every year to be a member of the EU. Or if you want to put that as £18 per year for each of you in this room, £18 per year. Yeah, you couldn't take a friend to the cinema for £18. Not if you had popcorn anyway. It's not an awful lot. So what are we kind of giving up here? Well, this is interesting because I calculated and was told, I was a scaremonger when I said that a hard Brexit would mean a 7 billion loss of our GDP over 10 years, and everyone said that's just ridiculous. That now Gordon, who was criticising Better Together for scaremongering, is actually scaremongering. And then the I've forgotten its name now. The Fraser of Allander Institute, thank you, should have just read my own slide. The Fraser of Allander Institute came out with a figure just a few weeks ago saying 8 billion. Now, when a nationalist economist says 7 billion, and an institute which has got very much unionist leanings and comes out with 1,000 million more damage to the economy than I have estimated, you should probably start getting very worried. I'm always conservative in that respect, anyway. And they also said that there'd be up to 80,000 job losses at the worst case scenario of a hard Brexit. And since that research, we've now had it confirmed there's going to be a hard Brexit. We know that's the case, unless the High Court has something to say about it, which would knock £2,000 off the average annual wage. Now let me ask you a question. £18 per year or £2,000 off the average wage that you all earn? Who wants the £2,000 loss? Anybody? Who would rather pay the £18 a year? Everyone? Yeah, I thought so. But what's actually happened is that the pound has become extremely volatile. And the pound has been kept artificially high for a period of about 35 years, specifically to help the London finance market, because assets that are sold are denominated in the pound, be it property, be it gilts, etc., are more attractive to international buyers. Also, the pound, having been kept artificially high, is one of the IMF's reserve currencies. So basically, countries all over the world trade with one another using pound sterling as one of the currencies, so they keep a reserve of it. And that, again, keeps the value of the pound high. It's now been dropping. It's been highly volatile. It's going back up and down. The High Court decision today has had it go up a little bit, and then it's going to go dropping down again when Article 50 is enacted. Who knows what's going to happen to the pound? What we do know is that since Brexit, exports just got about 20% cheaper. but components also got about 20% more expensive, and this is the problem. A lot of people think that what you can do is, because the pound is slumped, you can now export a great deal more than you did before, because it's now, our goods have become cheaper elsewhere. Yeah, fair enough, that was the case 40 years ago, but keeping the pound high for all that time meant it was easier to buy components from India and China and Taiwan than it was from Rutherglen and Kilmarnock and East Kilbride. So all the suppliers in Scotland shut down, and the main manufacturers now buy in as much. So basically, there's no benefit to exporting, unless for the food industry there certainly is, for the whisky industry there certainly is, because they don't buy components in from abroad. So it helps Scotland, but it doesn't necessarily help manufacturing in England, which is a lot more component-led. So there are no clusters surrounding the manufacturers, and therefore there can be no march of the makers. So you can't then say, oh, we're leaving the EU, and as they claimed, we're going to actually have a march of the makers, we're going to start manufacturing things again. We can't. You know, the high pound strategy over 35 years has cut the legs off the makers, they can't march. I've mentioned this, the currency state is under threat. But look at what happened. As I say, it's gone up a little bit, probably to about there today, which they're talking about as some sort of huge relief. It's like I've fallen off a 500-foot cliff, but it's okay. I've bounced at 480 feet. And so there you can see. You can see that's what happened when the Brexit vote came in. Now I ask you, you're looking at this. Do you bet on the pound right now? Do you invest in the pound? No. Exactly. And so basically, the UK has a massive, as a result of the pound being so artificially strong, as a result of imports being so cheap, we now import too little and import too much and export too little, and we have a terrible balance of payments. We've been covering that with debt. We've been covering that with foreign inflows of investment. Hold on a second. Nobody's going to be interested in buying our debt at this point now. So, you think austerity was bad. Wait till Brexit starts to really hit. It's going to really hurt. So I want to talk about the political direction of travel. I'm not going to get through all of this, but I'll show you one slide at the end that will give you a hint for some of the questions you might want to ask. First of all, I want to say I actually feel quite sorry for this lady. She's between a rock and a hard Brexit. David Cameron wanted a majority. He knew that he needed to promise a referendum for UKippers to jump in the last 2 weeks. It happened, he got his majority. She doesn't have any choice, because if she tries to go for a soft Brexit, there's a lot of people saying, oh, there's regret, that a lot of people are now no longer happy that they voted. Yeah, they're not, right? The polls are telling us that it's dropped 1 or 2%. They'd probably still win if they did it again. And even if it went down to 45%, if you can triangulate the 45%, you can win almost every seat, as we found in Scotland. In England, that's even more the case. So if she tries not to have any immigration curbs, if she tries to maintain freedom of movement and single market, then she opens the door for these guys. Now, right now, that party is dead. Yeah? If the Parliament votes against enacting Article 50, it would be suicide, because they would win a majority the next one time round in England for sure. They'd be able to triangulate the Leave vote very easily. Compare that to the situation we've got here in Scotland. We're seeing a plan, new innovation hubs to increase trade in Berlin, Brussels and Paris. We're seeing a doubling of the Scottish Development International presence internationally. And this is one for you, Craig. Do you know that the Labour government in Scotland decided that the UK Trade and Investment Department wasn't promoting us well enough? So they set up SDI. We still have to pay for the UK, and then we have to pay for our own SDI. You can take all that activity out of jars. There's thousands of examples just like that. Dedicated trade envoys for key markets, and a board of trade to promote internationalism and advise Scottish trade ministers. So you've got a government with a plan, but actually no real power to implement it. And then you've got the Westminster government that doesn't have a plan. I mean, it's not a case of, during the referendum, we used to say, Alex Salmon doesn't even have a plan B on currency. Yeah, after the High Court decision today, they won't even have a plan A on Brexit. They don't even understand what Brexit is or what it's going to do, because they believe in some sort of old-style British Empire greatness that we will somehow work our way through. And if you think I'm exaggerating, let's see about the clarity we have got. This was the first time she's had a cheer in Scotland. This lady tried to become Prime Minister and she almost managed it. And she's been letting the cat out of the bag. She's been telling people exactly how we're going to export our way out of trouble. She says countries like Japan have a growing hunger for classic British items like afternoon teas. You know, so she said, British classics like tea. Hold on a minute. Well, we did steal the tea bushes from China and plant them in our colony, India, in order to try and destroy the Chinese tea trade, but I don't think we'll be selling tea to China and India. However, jam, yeah, fair enough, and biscuits, yes, some shortbread, etc., could provide a major boost to the economy. Okay, so let's get a bit more specific. What did she actually say were world-famous brands or items that people want to buy from us? Well, here's the list she gave. She was very detailed. She said Scottish salmon, fair enough. Welsh beef. Is there such a thing? Is it not just meat? And Northern Irish whiskey. Now, I'm not slagging off Bushmills at all. It's not bad, but it is just one distillery. And I believe the malting happens in Scotland and is carted over there, so that's just why it's not so bad. But the world is not clamouring for Northern Irish whiskey, folks. And I know English cheese when I hear it. But why have I put up a jam here? Now, this is interesting because I actually have taken a few afternoon teas over the years, and the last 3 that I've had, this is the jam that have been served. So the Japanese might be buying French jam afterwards. I had a sani with that today. Now the final thing I was going to say is that we've also had the High Court ruling today. And this High Court ruling says that the Prime Minister does not have the power to actually enact Article 50 without going to Parliament. Now I think there might be a few questions on this because it's going to be very, very interesting. Parliament will vote it through. There was a massive majority in England. Nobody's going to expect to hold on to the seat if they say, nah, let's stop it now, okay? The only people who might do that are the House of Lords. But it would be ironic beyond belief if we were told that the EU is unelected and we have to leave it, and then the House of Lords were to stop us leaving it. That would just be beyond belief. But it's a possibility. The vote is not a problem. There will be a vote. The SNP will definitely vote no because they've got a mandate from the Scottish people to say, no, you can't enact it. That's great. That's expected. There will be some Tory rebels, and that actually means, therefore, that Labour will have to vote it through, which is going to be quite interesting. We don't know how the Liberals will vote. In Scotland, Carmichael will probably vote one way and tell the press he voted the other way. I know how I voted, but I'm not telling you. But it's not the vote that's the problem, it's the amendments. And what I would suggest the Scottish Government does is it tables amendments to this bill saying that Scotland should be allowed to represent itself in talks with the EU in order to maintain its access to the single market. That if Brexit goes ahead, Scotland needs a special deal because we didn't vote for it and there's no mandate for it here. There'll also be amendments suggesting that one of the things that the negotiators must do is retain access to the single market, retain access to the customs union. Theresa May is petrified of this happening. So she's going to appeal this. She's going to appeal to the Supreme Court. But don't worry, if the Supreme Court turn it over, she can always go to the European Court of Justice. She can go to the European Court of Justice and ask them to overturn the decision made in the UK Supreme Court so as we can actually quickly leave Europe. I'm not making this up, that is the system. Anyway, so Theresa May doesn't even have a plan A for Brexit, and that is a huge problem. Now, I'm going to stop now, but here's a quick clue as to some of the decisions, I was just going to quickly run you through this, but this is why I think we lost, and I think that's what we've got to talk about, is why we lost last time and how we're going to win next time. And you're hearing some interesting suggestions in terms of our economy, in terms of policies we could put forward, but the one thing I would say is that we were too nice. The one thing that I think we need to change is because right now there is only one certainty, and that is uncertainty. There is no upside to Brexit economically for Scotland at all. Now, some people might go, I don't like the EU. So, yeah, but we're going to be bankrupt because of Brexit, whether you like the EU or not. And so basically, we need to point out all of the problems, the economic problems that are coming. I'm not saying we need to be Project Fear. We just need to not be too nice, like we were last time, and actually point out the downside of staying with Westminster, because we failed to do that properly. Thank you.